Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
It's time for the Bonnie Sher Show, a whirlwind of wit, wisdom, celebrity, and the boomer life. With a little bit of this and a lot of that and so much more you don't want to miss, here's Bonnie.
Well, hello there, new friends and old, from near and from afar. I'd like to welcome you to the Bonnie Sher Show. I am Bonnie Sher. I'm your host through the worlds of entertainment, the great boomer generation, and of course, nearest and dearest to my little heart, the world of type 1 diabetics. And have I got a show for you today? So thank you for tuning in. Please, if you have any comments or any questions, give us a call here in the studio at 323-843-2826, and or you can follow on Twitter, # B-Share Radio. That's BSHER Radio. Before we get this show on the road, I'd like to acknowledge jazz great Wayne Cobham, Grammy-winning Wayne Cobham, that is, for creating my super-duper hero theme song. So thanks, Wayne, always. And also, I'd like to take a minute to say thank you to Corey Bone from Crown and Anchor Jewelry. You can find Crown and Anchor, on Etsy. You can also find him on Twitter. And the reason we're so excited is because Corey is the one who puts the jewelry on me and allows me to wear these pieces on the show in exchange for this promotional mention. Check out Corey. Okay, when we come back, luxury spokesmodel, contributing style editor, author. Her name is Doris Hobbs. And we're going to our first break.
Every child deserves to feel safe. Love Cures, a benefit of healing for the abused child's soul at Symphony Space in Manhattan, June 26th. Starring Broadway World Award winner Julie Budd, featuring Broadway performers and special guests, including the Young People's Chorus of New York City. Director, Tony Award winner Wayne Salento. Proceeds to the New York Center for Children. Learn about Love Cures or buy tickets, symphonyspace.org, because every child deserves to be safe.
Well, our first guest here with us today, actually, she's calling in, is Doris Hobbs, who is a creative visionary. She's an accomplished entrepreneur and a fashion doyen who has forged an unprecedented path in building her brand. So, hello, Doris.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. For our callers, listeners, and viewers, Doris is calling in today. Oh, this is so sad. I really feel badly about this. Don't you dare laugh. Well, don't ever stop is really what I meant. Are you still in Maui or have you made it to Honolulu?
No, we're actually leaving Maui and we're heading to Honolulu for some other projects I have going on over there for the rest of the week.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what drives you? Oh, and by the way, to the audience, not only is Doris a visionary, an accomplished entrepreneur, or entreprenette, as I call us, and the fashion person, but even closer to my heart, because as much as I love fashion, I am very, very aware of people who also have type 1 diabetes, which Doris does. But before we get into that now, Doris, tell me, please answer the question as to how did you come to this? What were you doing before? Were these changes, do you think, made because of your diagnosis? Things like that. I want to know more about Doris that I can't find yet reading your
Okay, so I basically worked numerous retail jobs. I was very fascinated with fashion, and so of course you love fashion, so you get into retail. So I did that for about a decade, and I got into fashion merchandising in the time. So I was really creative on doing the floor sets and the designs. So I did that for a while, and then after I finished college, I got my marketing and literature and writing and all art and all these different elements were building up. So I basically got into the corporate world and started working. And then finally, it was just, I got laid off after 4.5 years at one of my corporate jobs. And then it was kind of at the point where I was just like, what am I going to do now? So this is pre-diabetic, like before I even knew that I was a diabetic. So I went to a fashion event in San Francisco, and I met a fashion blogger that I was following online for a while. And she basically gave me a really inspiring, piece of advice where she said, I asked her, why did you start your blog? And she said, because I wanted to do it because I love fashion. And I didn't care if anybody ever looked at it. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So I got in the car and I was talking to my boyfriend about it, and we were going back and forth. And he was saying, you're the perfect candidate for this. Everybody says you should be a model. You have literature, marketing, you know how to, there's so many things that you can do that you should do it. And so there I am with no job thinking, okay, well, maybe I will. I have nothing better to do. So I started developing my blog, and I called it Rich in Love. And Rich in Love actually came from the money clip. This is kind of a story I don't really share too often, but it's a money clip that I gave to my boyfriend when we first got together about 9 years ago. And it says on his money clip, Rich in Love in Spanish. So he had it on the table when we were having dinner one evening after we were deciding on doing the website and blog and stuff. And I didn't know what to call it. I was going to call it something like, redheads or glamour or something like that. So I looked down at the table and I saw the money clip, and I said, that's it. We're going to call the blog Rich in Love. Because I told him when he had the money clip, when I gave it to him, I told him, if there's no money in this clip, you'll always be rich in love, my love. So we wanted to play off of that, because the website or blog is basically, it's the perfect marriage of fashion, luxury, his photography, because he does professional photography. So I got really lucky on that. And it's just a perfect marriage. And now we have married in it. So after 2 years of doing the website and blogging and getting my feet wet and getting, sponsorships and doing, phenomenal with it, diabetes struck. And then it was kind of like, what do I do now? And I didn't give up. 2 days after I was diagnosed, I went out for a photo shoot. And I told myself, diabetes does not control me. I control diabetes. And that was the mindset that I kept. And I've been basically from that point on educating people through my website and my blog and sponsorships. And I found a lot of people that I've worked with are diabetic too. So I've really built a network and community supporting people with diabetes through their brands and their designs. So it's just a beautiful thing.
I think that's fabulous. Must make you feel so good to be able to marry. I know for myself, this show was born of a marriage of my life as an entertainer, the fact that, well, yes, I'm a boomer, and they're looking at me funny. Did you not know I was an old broad? Oh, my boobs need to be higher? I don't understand. Oh, he says go on. Oh, it's the old put the mic in front of her face routine. After I went through all that to put the red lipstick on, right? Okay, then. But isn't it marvelous when you can take different and of course, type 1 diabetes, when you can find a way to integrate what makes you feel good about yourself and the parts of you, and it doesn't make any difference what those parts are. But I think,
well, yeah, and it's the same thing of like everything compiled together from working in retail, all of my college background, and everything just kind of compiled together. And I believe diabetes was just kind of, in a way, it was a positive thing. And I know it's kind of like you hear a hesitation because it's like diabetes. It's like, oh, how can it be positive? But I've found a lot of glamour with diabetes. I found a lot of positivity through it. And I even started recently, I started my own little media campaign, T1D NG, because type 1 diabetes and glamorous, because I want people to share the glamour of diabetes. I don't want it to be a negative thing anymore. It's not the greatest thing on earth, obviously you know that, but I mean, we do have some glamorous points to it because we have strength. We have empowerment, and I know we've had conversations about that too. So, I mean, it's just, I want people to know that being a diabetic, we're just amazing individuals. We're number one. You know what I'm saying? So.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a wonderful thing that you're doing there, Doris. And please hold on to that thought because we're going to take a break. And when we return, I want to know about you, your future hopes, and your future dreams. We'll be back in a minute. Yes, we'll be back in 60 seconds. See you in a minute.
Since when did experience become something to hide? I say we own it. Lose all that negativity. Just let it go. It's just bad energy. Oh, and lose those terrible black balloons they give you on your 50th. What's up with that?
Hey, we hear you. That's why our members love AARP the magazine. It celebrates you with fun and provocative content, from lifestyle and entertainment to in-depth reporting. And it's just one of the great benefits of membership.
If you don't think this is right for me when you think AARP, then you don't know ARP. Get to know us at aarp.org/possibilities.
To be at peace with myself is the most prominent thing, and I am at peace with myself. I didn't deal this deck, I'm just playing the game. That's all. That's it. Meals on Wheels has given me a mode of freedom that I wouldn't have otherwise. And making sure they get the nutrition that I need, and it's a balanced meal. My name is Maurice McGriff. America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
You are listening to the Bonnie Sher Show, Boomer Life. And we have the pleasure of speaking with a woman on a mission, Doris Hobbs. Join the conversation. Call us at 323-843-2826 or tweet the hashtag #BShareRadio. Okay, let's pick up where we left off before the break. Doris, do me a favor. Let our listeners and viewers know how they may follow you.
You can definitely follow me on my website, richandlovefashion.com. I'm very active on Instagram, which is also richandlovefashion. Then my Twitter account, which is Doris_Hobbs, HOBBS. Those are the main social media platforms I use, and occasionally you'll find me hopping around on Facebook.
So you're an occasional popper. I like it.
Well, actually, I'm a little tweet. Actually, more.
You're a little tweet.
Yeah,
I've been called worse.
I do hop around on Facebook, but not as often as I probably should. But I love Instagram and I love Twitter. So that's where you can find me the most.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your glamour and your attitude with our listeners. I look forward to hearing more about you and from you. So, Doris Hobbs, thank you so very much for being with us today.
You are very welcome, Bonnie.
As we go to break, after the applause is over, as we go to break, I really want to acknowledge the wonderful work of the Diabetes Research Institute. I encourage you to support their efforts, and you can visit them online at diabetesresearch.org. Our song of the day is coming up next, which is, I think, just perfect for Mother's Day, or Nana's Day, as I now call it. And it's called If I Could, right after this break.
Type 1 diabetes can be living in anyone.
Type 1 diabetes is when your pancreas doesn't produce insulin. It's not caused by your diet. It's not caused by anything you did.
Type 1 diabetes can be very serious.
Blindness, amputation.
Learn more about type 1 diabetes.
Help support JDRF finding a cure.
T1D looks like my brother.
T1D looks like a friend.
Type 1 diabetes looks like me.
If I could, I'd protect you from the sadness in your eyes, give you courage in a world of compromise. Yes, I would. If I could, I would teach you all the things I never learned, and I'd help you cross those bridges that I burned. Yes, I would. If I could, I would try to shield your innocence from time, but the part of life I gave you isn't mine. I watched you grow so I could let you go. If I could, I would help you make it through those hungry years. Though I know that I can never cry your tears, oh, but I would. If I could, time and place where you don't want to be. You don't have to walk along this road with me. My yesterdays don't have to be your way. If I knew, I'd have tried to change this world brought you to, but there really wasn't much that I could do, but I would. Oh, if I could, I still
And that, of course, was Mark Arthur Miller. Oh, this memory course I'm taking just isn't working. I keep forgetting to go. Anyway, welcome back to the Bonnie Sher Show, Boomer Life. And my co-host for this segment is Jessica Ching, a member of the T1D Type 1 Diabetes community. From the great state of California, hello, Jessica. Jessica, you've been living with type 1 diabetes. Would you please share your story?
My story started 38 years ago. My story actually doesn't focus on the beginning, but rather where we are now, because I have a...
Well, that's a great story.
Yeah, people always talk about when they were diagnosed and all this, and, I remember that, but in my mind, actually, that was kind of the dark ages, urine testing.
We were talking about that in the green room, yes.
I don't have any particularly bad nor good memories of it. I was 15 years old, 16 years old, and with no knowledge of medicine or health, I knew that urine testing was pretty much worthless. It's a test that tells you what happens, 4 hours ago. It's pretty not helpful and misleading, and I think that void of technology went on for, 10, 15 years. Before we really started to get tools and really started to become the health consumers that we are today.
Well, that's really what I'd love to chat with you about. I also have been a diabetic back to those dark ages. And I was so intrigued by, the only thing I can think of to call it is off-label brilliance. Could you explain a little bit about this looping? And I know there are 40 million different names in the artificial pancreas and all of that wonderful stuff which exists that I know zero about. And you would think I would know more, but you'd be wrong.
No. It's very leading edge, it's very cutting edge, it's very exciting, and I have a picture here of a triangle. And I wanted to start about talking about consumer health tools. So when you hear about all this medical innovation and new stuff coming, there are all these things for doctors. They are emergency health room tools, electronic medical records assistance, it's laboratory techniques, it's workflow stuff. It doesn't have anything to benefit me directly. Actually, I stay out of the doctor's office. I haven't been to a doctor in a long time. I do my own management. But in diabetes, it's different. As you know, you can't take care of diabetes for the 7.5 or 8 minutes that you get in a doctor's office. You have to do it at home and everywhere else. So we have all these things today.
Absolutely true.
Blood testing came in the early 80s. We thought that was a breakthrough because we used to do urine testing.
Well, it was.
It was. It was awful back then. They had these fat lancets.
Yes.
That made huge
I
holes in your fingers.
Yeah.
So,
and then they would scab over. It was very attractive.
And then you have to keep poking through. But today we have we all know about this great, quote, innovation called microfine lancets, both syringes and lancets. But that was just the start of all of these new tools that we have, which include insulin pumps. I think first approved in around 1985. So I got onto an insulin pump pretty early. It was around the start of 1990. I've been on a pump for around 27 years now. And I'll tell you something really interesting. In 1990, when I got on an insulin pump, even though my insurance company paid for it, I had to fight them for it. They paid for it. There was no knowledge in the medical community about how these things worked.
Absolutely.
So all of us back then, we did our own experimentation. We formed our little groups, which today we have figured out are very, very powerful networks. And we figured out how to do it ourselves. And about 10 years ago, Dexcom and continuous glucose monitoring came to market. So I have a funny story. I was one of the first 100 or 500 people on a Dexcom. And I used to go around with the local sales rep. And I'd go to pump group meetings, sit at the table. He'd sit in the back of the room. I'd pull the thing out of my bra and start talking. Then all bets are off for the meeting. But after doing this for a few weeks, he said, you have to come and work for us. You have to come work for us. So that's how I got to start working for Dexcom. And then I pivoted my career from consumer electronics and consumer technology into medical consumer technology.
I think I need to start at the beginning. I mean, I know how to load an insulin. I can. No, I'm teasing. But as I look back over the years, I'm amazed. And my level of amazement has been peaked now when I hear about people like yourself, like Joanne Milo, and they all understand what they're talking about. And it makes me feel like a dumb diabetic. So for anybody else out there who doesn't understand it, you are not dumb.
None of us are dumb. I'll tell you, the
what
first
it
time
is
you do
we
anything.
haven't had the exposure. And that's why I felt so very lucky to have you on to discuss this. So I'm going to stop talking and let you fill in some blanks here about how these new advances are really what we need. And if they're not going to do it for us, then we got to do it ourselves. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So a friend and I, he's a software engineer, have taken really the first, quote, garage project, open community, artificial pancreas, and it's what's called an open source community effort. So a group of other programmers and people with diabetes got together and linked an insulin pump with a continuous glucose monitor together with a complicated software program called an algorithm. Put that out in the public space. You can download today on loopkit. I forget what where it actually is, but the name of the project is called LoopKit, and a bunch of us tried it. Well, my friend and I said, this is crazy. Between the insulin pump and the continuous glucose monitor, you now have a computer that follows a set of instructions. It reads the glucose, and then it tells the pump what to do. But it uses the instructions, if this, then that. It uses the same instructions today, tomorrow, the next day, the same as yesterday, the day before. So if 2 days before, the day before, yesterday and today, the computer program made the same mistake, it's going to do it again tomorrow. It doesn't learn.
Well, that's in keeping.
So what my friend and I are doing are building something called artificial intelligence, where the computer learns.
I understand. We have memory for everything except for humans.
This is true. This is true.
It? I mean, that would be pretty cool, too. Listen, whatever, I think.
But I'll tell you what's so interesting about this. So today, you can actually teach a computer how to learn in the same way you can teach your pet how to learn or even a baby how to learn. They're called neural networks in your brain. And your brain learns in layers, just like you learn the alphabet, then you learn a word, then you learn a sound, then you learn a sentence, and then you learn how to write. It's a similar process with software. And think of it this way. I always use my cat on a skateboard example for artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the standard part of it is you put the cat on a skateboard and you tell the kitty how to skate. You say, kitty, right paw, kitty, left paw, kitty, forward, kitty, backward. And you push the cat down the street. So kitty goes down the street. Kitty's skateboarding down the street. Turns right, turns left. Woohoo! Next thing you know, kitty's jumping off the curbs. Kitty went down to the skate parks, doing 360s in the air. Well, we didn't teach kitty that. We only taught kitty right paw, left paw, forward and backward. But the kitty learned. So in the same sort of analogy, this is how I explain artificial intelligence and machine learning to people. You teach the computer the equivalent right paw, left paw, front and backwards. And the next thing you know, the computer's flying wheelies and not only understanding what your blood sugar is, but it learned that when it does this, even though we said right paw, if you go too far forward, you're gonna wipe out. So it learns to stay back in range, and it's pretty similar to blood sugar, right? You can't go too far to the right, left, forward, or backwards. You have to sort of stay in that even plane all the time. And even if you do 360s, those generally aren't good. So the computer learns what's wrong and what's right based on the experiences it sees, even though you don't specifically tell it how to respond.
Fascinating.
Isn't that cool?
Now, also, when we were in the green room, you were telling me that in order to employ this method, there are certain pumps that need to be adjusted, and they are not most probably the pump that you're using right now. It's an older version. What is the difference between, I don't mean the technology of it, but generally speaking, why is it that it's limited only to, or is it just yet, to be able to communicate? Did they do something in the upgrading?
So the short answer to that is Loop, which is the system that I use that we're building on top of to employ this machine learning artificial intelligence on, is a system built by the community for members of the community. It's not a commercial project. It's not been validated or endorsed in any way by any government body, or even the people who built it don't claim to have tested it. So everyone who's using it is doing it so at their own risk and on an experimental basis. But that being said, it is available to everyone if you have all the pieces. So what the original developers of the system did was they took existing pieces that you may use today. You use a Dexcom continuous glucose monitor. We use a Medtronic insulin pump. It's an older pump that, for reasons back in 10 or 15 years ago, the software on the pump was different, and it allows us to then lay over this machine learning
Understood.
and
Understood.
artificial intelligence algorithm on top of that.
Well, I hope you guys are learning a lot too. I find this absolutely fascinating. After almost 50 years now, I never know from one day to the next. And I have learned that more is better in terms of how you can proactively do something to make your health better. I always felt like I was just kind of floating in the wind, doing what they said, but no rhyme or reason to that, and really no way other than guessing how much insulin. I read on Facebook, somebody will say, oh, I had this huge dinner, so I double bolus, and I never heard of that, You have a number, you put it in, and you pretty much work from that, which is a lot of the reason I would imagine that I can do virtually the same thing a couple of days in a row and have totally different blood sugar levels.
Well, even if you eat the same thing every day, as you know, your blood sugar is different. And even if you check every hour. So before I started using continuous glucose monitor, I did about 10 finger pokes a day. So about every hour and a half that I'm awake, I'm checking, which is a lot. But it's not enough, as you know. Mm-hmm. With the systems that we have today, with a regular continuous glucose monitor that you can get from a manufacturer like Dexcom, it will check for you every 5 minutes and it will alert you. The missing piece, of course, is it doesn't do anything about your blood sugar if it's too high or too low. Right. So this is what the closed loop system that we're working on, just in our garage, does. It looks at the readings every 5 minutes. And I do have a picture there up on the screen. You'll see with the green circle, that is actually what I call the control center for the loop system. You see a number of things. The green circle means that it's on. You see my blood glucose there is coming from the Dexcom directly. It's 140 milligrams per deciliter, and the arrow is flat, which means I'm pretty stable. The middle column, you'll see a minus 0.5. So 0.5 units per hour is my basal rate. But when you look at the chart below of glucose with the blue band, you'll see that it's projected that I'm going to go up and then I'm going to go down. So if you look a couple lines below that, you see insulin delivery and all those bars going up. That is loop actually correcting my blood sugar as the blue line was above the range. But it's saying now that I've given you so much, you're actually going to be low if I don't shut it off. So it actually has stopped my basal rate for a period of time until I normalize. So it's doing this every 5 minutes, which is something that, although I can do manually, I certainly am not open to doing nothing in my life but doing this every 5 minutes. Duh.
Really, let's try and have a life. Brava.
Thank you.
Brava.
It's not just my work. It's
you're the one
people.
who is clever enough to say yes, come on my show and explain it. Works for me. Is it my posture? Am I getting too close?
You're fine, just like that.
Should we permabond me right here?
We're excited. This is really, really cool stuff. So I really talk about grassroots innovation, which is definitely what this is, and citizen science. You know, we are reading blood sugar, we are managing levels, we are looking at fat intake, at stress, at sugar, at how we react to glycemic index. We are scientists doing this. We have as much insight as any of the researchers. And with the tools today, we can manage to a greater degree than we ever have. So you have lots of choices. You know, you can do this or not. But if you choose to go down this crazy path of innovation, lots of cool things can result. I've got all kinds of tricks, and we can talk about them as well.
Okay, let's go to that. And then before we even get any farther than that, I already am going to ask you to please try and find some time to visit with us again. Your information is phenomenal. It's easy to understand relatively right after I got off the hump of algorithms.
The cat on the skateboard. Thinking about that. The cat learns how to do wheelies when you've really only taught it right paw, left paw, forward, and backwards. And that's the same thing a computer can do to help you manage diabetes.
I'm lucky if I can make a file with my computer. You know, not all of us grew up in that techie thing. I think that, although I think I'm a youngster, clearly I'm not. But from what you've explained so far, I wouldn't be afraid to do this. You know, it's that fear of failure, you know, which normally stops people from proceeding. I don't feel that, and I certainly hope that none of you out there are feeling that.
Well, you know, let me
either.
ask you this. Have you guys heard about that TV show Jeopardy and the computer Watson that played the two all-time champions ever?
Mm-hmm.
They both lost to the computer Watson. And that was more than 10 years ago. Today's computers are way smarter. If you think you can manage your blood sugar as flawlessly as a computer can, I'm not saying the computer doesn't make any mistakes. It will make some. But I'm betting on the fact that the computer is going to make far fewer mistakes than I am. And that's the concept of this system that I'm using right now.
Fabulous. Well, let me, one more quick question about that. Pardon me. You mentioned earlier that predominantly what's required is an older version of Medtronic. How does one find that? I understand that that's a little trickier.
Yeah, I found it in the back of my closet. So
I've moved so many times I don't have a back of my closet.
27 years on a pump. So
I think
it's an old version.
I didn't get onto the pump until 2004. I was very reticent, and now I get the shakes when I mean, not a low blood sugar shake, but I start yearning to be. I remember there was a time where when I was still on both the CGM and the pump that I was always so excited when the two meshed up and I was going to be free and I could
for
take
10 minutes anyway.
Yeah, and take my bath without having to worry about the sticky, gooey thingy. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. So before I lose you now, please tell our peeps how they can follow you and find out more about this exciting work that you and your friend, the
software engineer.
That guy, yeah. I don't even have the word in my vocabulary.
He's actually a really amazing medical technology innovator. But he and I work together on this, just sort of on the side of what we do in our day jobs. I do write about it on Facebook a little bit, so you can check there and follow what's going on. Glad to be talking about this. It's a very exciting thing that's happening, even though, you know, I don't intend to bring this to a company or anything. This is a project.
But they might bring themselves to you.
Well, the goal of this was to build something that's useful for me that other people like me might be able to use and put it back out to the community. It's not a commercial effort, but what I do hope the commercial implications are is that we have all these expectations for the way it works, the usability, the size, the form factor, the alarms, the interface that you see on your phone, the ease of connectivity, all the features that you have. Since I have those things today, I would expect any commercial system to have all of those things too.
Absolutely. Well, bless you for the work you're doing. I think it's fabulous, and we will chat in the near future and find another date when you're coming down to Southern California. I know it's a big difference from Berkeley. I know it's a different state up there, I think.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next up, Boomer News and views from my soapbox. Back in 60 seconds.
I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a social worker. When I found out that I had hepatitis C, I was a single mother, and I was absolutely terrified.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, estimates there are close to 3 million baby boomers infected with hepatitis C. Because there can be no symptoms for decades, most don't even know it. But if detected in time, Hep C can be cured, and the treatment is simple.
Today I feel great. I'm a healthy 65-year-old. I bike to work, I go to the gym, and I've cleared the virus.
The CDC is urging everybody born between 1945 and 1965 to get tested. It's an easy one-time blood test that may be covered by insurance.
I got a disease that could have killed me, but I saved my own life by getting tested.
Don't wait. Ask your doctor about getting tested for Hep C, because knowing is everything.
Oh, you mean me? Hi, guys. Bonnie Sher again. And I'd like to let you know that today's Boomer News comes from another source that I fortunately don't have here. Do you have the correct link there? Economic impact. Okay, let's do it. We're being impacted again.
The decision to retire is one of the most important personal financial decisions anyone can make. Well, it turns out that it also has a profound macroeconomic impact that we are only now beginning to appreciate. Economists have known for a long time that as the U.S. population ages, it'll tend to slow down economic growth just because we'll have a smaller workforce as a result. But there's new evidence that suggests there's another impact on the economy that's potentially even more important. Because older workers tend to be the most knowledgeable and the most experienced, when they retire, that hurts the productivity of everybody left behind. And that drags on the economy through productivity growth. These findings come from a new economic research paper that just came out in the last week. The economists looked at all 50 states, they looked at the ones that aged faster, and they found that in those states, economic growth slowed more. About a third of the slowdown was because their workforce wasn't growing as quickly, but the rest of it was because the remaining workers just weren't as productive. You know, this kind of makes sense. Older workers aren't just the ones who are most experienced and capable, they also tend to make the people around them more capable and more confident and knowledgeable about how to do their jobs. If you look around the country right now, there are employers from coast to coast grappling with the fact that some of their most experienced employees are now coming up on retirement, and they're very worried about how to replace them. There's a lot of sort of tribal knowledge that you acquire on the job that you cannot simply teach in college. The country as a whole needs to come to grips with this, because if it doesn't, it's facing a double whammy from the aging of the population. This, I think, adds an extra impetus to a lot of the discussion now that we should do more to extend retirement ages, both in private pensions and in Social Security.
And now, the views from my soapbox. As you might know, my soapbox is who I think really got it right, followed by who I think should really, really be ashamed of themselves. So let's start with my shout out. And today, my shout out is to the great state of Nevada. Democratic Senator, and you'll pardon me if I mispronounce her name, Ivana Cancela is aiming to help put through a bill that she introduced last month, SB 265, which seeks to improve access to essential diabetes drugs by implementing price controls, a measure that Big Pharma has long opposed. Okay, and my shout down. Well, my shout down is to the members of Senate and Congress who espoused that, well, gee, if you have a pre-existing condition, you probably did something wrong, and we were careless. And so the Republican argument is, well, this is really a non-issue because people had a choice. Oh, okay, so the choice is then that we chose to have a pre-existing illness? I don't think so. And then I read also a tweet from the Reagan Battalion, which was, there is an argument to be made about covering children with pre-existing conditions, but adults, they had a choice. They were careless. Really? Well, if you don't agree, or if you do agree and you would like to let me know about it, it's very simple. Just go to bonniesher.com/blog and sound off. Well, before we say goodbye, I would like to thank our guests today. That would be the lovely Doris Hobbs and the spectacularly brilliant Jessica Ching. And that's our show for this week. I hope you'll return next week to visit us for another 50-minute trip through the land of Bonnie, through the land of the great boomer generation, and of course, the strongest of us all, a T1 diabetic. Until then, please follow and visit bonniesher.com. You can follow the #1 Bonnie Sher on Twitter. And please like the Bonnie Sings Lena, Lena, as in Lena Horne, which is my Facebook fan page. Most of you are aware of the incredible friendship and mentoring which I received from Sammy Davis Jr. He was a great mentor and he was a great friend. And so, as a result, I like to end each of my shows sort of Carol Burnett style, the one with maybe a little nod and a little wink to you, Mr. D. And before we go, wish your mothers a happy Mother's Day. Bye!